Hello, I'm Eran Solomon, your music theory teacher, and in this video I want to talk about the circle of fifths. It's a question I'm often asked about, so I want to teach you how the circle works and why I do not use it. But first, what is the circle of fifths? Well, the circle of fifths is a tool which helps us determine which accidentals, flats or sharps, are in the scale we are, and I'm talking about the scales Western music uses, the minor and major scales. You may well know that if I take a melody and say it's too low for my singer, I would be asked to take it up one note. So if I have this melody, and I want to take it a note higher, it would sound like this. A bit weird. And two notes higher. Well, that's because inevitably I have not conserved the structure of the melody. I have not conserved the intervals correctly when transposing it a tone higher. So, in order to do that properly, I have to add some accidentals. I have to add some sharps or flats or change them. It all depends on which scale was the original and which is the newest scale. And generally, when I use a scale, I need to know exactly the notes which are there. So for example, if this melody began in C and I want to move it to E, I have to know that I have to use an F sharp and a C sharp and a G sharp and a D sharp in order for it to sound correct. Now this is better, okay? But how did I know that I have to change these accidentals and not others? So, for that we have the circle of fifths. But before we start with the circle itself, there is a rule about accidentals which I have to teach you. And that rule also works in another method which I will talk to you about later in this video. That's my way to find the accidentals of each scale. So, about the accidentals. The accidentals are an accumulative row. It always begins with F, F sharp, and then there is C, and then there is G, and D, and A, and E, and B. It always begins with an F sharp, and if we have two sharps in scale, it will be adding another sharp. It will be the F sharp and the C sharp added to it. It accumulates. So, and if we have three sharps, it will be the F and the C and the G. You would never have a scale with an F sharp and then a skip to a D sharp and then an E sharp. It always begins with an F, either, and from then on we add more sharps. So this is the row of sharps, and it's a fixed accumulative row. The flats are actually exactly the same, they just begin in reverse. So the first sharp is B flat, so if we have one sharp in a scale, it has to be the B flat. Anyway, if we have two, it will be the B and the E, and three, B and E and A, etc. So actually it's quite useful to know this row F, C, G, D, A, E, B, or B, E, A, D, G, C, F, to know it by heart. It helps in both methods. Now, about the circle of fifths. Music scholars have found that it's very useful to arrange the most used scales in a kind of clock, in a kind of circle, like this. Now in this clock, indeed, up there is 12 o'clock, which is also called 0 o'clock, like midnight, and that would be the scale which has no accidentals whatsoever, and that of course is the C scale, which is like the 0 of all scales. And then this clock works in fifths, which means that the next key on that clock will be a fifth higher. So what's a fifth higher above C? That's of course a G. And I'm talking about perfect fifths. Then another perfect fifth from G, there's D. And another perfect fifth, that's the A. And then the E. And then the B. And then a perfect fifth above B is an F sharp. Otherwise, it would have been a triton, of course. And another fifth higher, that's the C sharp. Now, when arranged like this, it works really like a clock, because C has no accidentals whatsoever, and G has one sharp. Now, as I've explained before, that one sharp has to be the F sharp. So there you go. G, the G scale, has one sharp, and that's an F sharp. And then the next key, which is D, D major, the D major scale has two sharps. And if there are two, they have to be F sharp and C sharp, etc., etc. So this is really a circle of fifths going up, going to the right. That's a perfect fifth from each scale to the next one coming right after it. Okay, so of course when we arrive at C sharp, that will have the maximum number of sharps. It will have all the sharps. It will have, like the place on the clock, it will have 7 sharps. So this is 7 o'clock in sharpish in the circle of fifths. Now, what about the flats? Now the normal clock and the circle of a fifths split their ways, because with the sharps it's like a mirror image. It's not that would not be 11 sharps. That would be 1 going down a fifth from C. That would be a scale with 1 flat. And if it's 1 flat, it has to be the B flat. What scale is a perfect fifth below C? That's of course the F. And a perfect fifth below F, that would be the B flat. A scale called B flat major. And that would have, it's 2 o'clock in the mirror world of this clock. So B flat major has 2 flats, and they would be B flat and E flat, etc., etc. So it goes another fifth down. I enclose a much nicer chart of the circle of fifths in the link below, but you can find it very easily on the internet. I took mine also from there. I think I chose a nice circle there. So 3 o'clock going that way would be E flat, and 4 o'clock would be A flat major, and 5 o'clock would be D flat major. Now notice that it coincides with the C sharp, because C sharp and D flat are indeed the same note. So it's the same notes, the same frequencies which comprise this scale, but they would be called in other names. So if I call it a C sharp major, it would have 7 sharps, but if I call it a D flat major, it will have, it's 5 o'clock on that side, it will have 5 flats. And again, to scales which have the same notes actually, but they will be called otherwise, that's the G flat major, and it will have 6 flats, just as F sharp major would have 6 sharps, and it goes on. And then finally we have the C flat major, which has the maximum number of sharps, and that's 7, which has the maximum number of flats, and that's 7 flats. The complete row, the complete series. So it's that easy. If you want to know what sharps or flats we have in an A scale, you just find A on the table on this chart, and you see that it's 3 o'clock. So let's complete this. You know that it has 3 sharps. And if you find a piece which has 4 sharps, you would easily find that it's an E major scale. And 5 sharps, that would be a B scale or a C flat major scale. So that's the circle of fifths in major scales. Now about the minor scales, the minor scales are exactly the same. It just begins with A, because A minor is a parallel scale to C major scale, and they have, or relative, there are people who call it relative scales, and they have, and it has no accidentals, just as C that has no accidentals. And then it goes on, a fifth above AM is an E, so E minor has 1 sharp, and then B minor has 2 sharps, and then F sharp minor has 3 sharps, etc., etc. I won't go on writing the whole chart here, because it's not already, it's a bit too messy. But as I've said, you have the link to a proper chart of the circle of fifths. So there you have it. It's a great tool through which you can determine which sharps or flats are in any given scale, and determine which scale has such and such sharps or flats. If you get a part to play and you see the signature, which is usually written right at the beginning near the clef, you see the sharps or flats in the piece, then you can really divine which scale this melody, this music is in. And it's especially good to demonstrate how the scales are related to one another, how they are structured together. Only trouble is that now you are dependent on a chart, on a diagram. Now if you have it always before you, it's great. If you know all the scales by heart, that's even better. But what happens if you don't have this chart and you still don't know all the scales by heart? So either you give up, or there's another way. You can just grope your way on a keyboard, say, and build the scale one interval after the other. Say if you want to build an E major scale, you begin from E and then take a tone, that's an F sharp, and another tone, that's a G sharp, and then a semitone, because that's how a major scale is constructed, and you would get an A, and then a B, and then another tone to C sharp, and another tone to D sharp, and then a semitone back to E. So you have the 4 sharps there on E, but that's also lame, it's too slow, it's not very professional to go that way. What I look for is a method where you don't have to rely on any chart, on any diagram, and you don't have to memorize all the scales. I love a method where you can calculate, following some simple short rules, which accidentals are needed for any given scale. And for that you may check out my jig in Fiverr in the description box below, in the link I put there. So that's it. That's the circle of fifths. I hope it was useful, at least to satisfy your curiosity. And it's actually good to have always an additional method, a backup method to any method you learn. But as I've said, it's not the best way to learn. I know of many pupils which really got frustrated from the circle of fifths. And that's the reason why people ask me about the circle of fifths, because they think that's the only method to use, but there is another method, as I've said. So I hope you've liked it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell button to get notifications of new videos. So bye bye for now. Bye.